Instead of starting with the experience, e-commerce allowed us as an industry to really focus on that transaction and every signal of intent that led to it. But what it lost was the ability to be a little bit more magical about the discovery and what led someone to first put your brand in front of their eyes, in front of their heart, and pull out their wallet. I would argue that the industry's got it all backwards. We started with text, which is the least shopping intuitive interface for people to go into shopping mode. And then we went to voice, and I think visual is really where it's going to be at for retail. And you take a picture within the Pinterest app of the thing you're interested in. You love those shoes. You think that table's amazing. And what Pinterest does is brings back the things that are visually relevant. Similar to what, think about like Spotify. We're doing for shopping what Spotify's done for music. We're looking at the pixels within an image, and we're identifying the objects and taking them and putting them up against all the things we have in our taste graph and bringing back the things that are most similar to that, so that you can do some more meaningful, interesting shopping that allows you to pivot from inspiration to action. Awesome. Yay. All right. So thank you, everyone. I really appreciate you spending some time with me and allowing me to spend some time with you. I'm going to talk a little bit about experience shopping and do it from a context of sort of where the industry has evolved from. All of you know retail is something that has changed a lot over the years, but the fundamental idea that inspiration is a big part of what makes people want to pull out their wallet and spend money has not changed. How many of you out here have heard of the iconic department store Dayton's? All right, awesome. How about, so it looked like about a third of you. How about Target? Anyone hear of the discount, the company called Target? So Dayton Hudson started back in the early 1900s, iconic department store in my hometown, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Woo! Another Minneapolis, nice. At least two of us in the room. And so they actually have been leaders in creating inspiration. And I bring them up because as a kid, during the holidays, what we would do is my family would get all of us cousins dressed up, and all the aunts and uncles would head down to the department store downtown Minneapolis and go up to the 8th floor, have a really nice dinner, then go walk through. Every year they picked a new theme that they would feature in the windows, and the kids would be able to look at some sort of fairy tale story that they would display in different characters and walk through the story. And at the end, we'd all go shopping. That was a pretty amazing experience. What happened over time, obviously, as things evolved as they do, and in 1962, Dayton Hudson opened Target as a trial as their discount department store. And so, at the root, whether it's Target, Dayton's, or any other experience that you have in shopping, inspiration plays such an incredible role. And obviously, the physical store was one way, and primarily the only way, that consumers could understand what possibilities in their lives could they discover and bring back to their house. And shopping was a thing that you did when you walked down Main Street or when you went into a big department store and you walked around. It was a physical experience, and it helped you see what's possible out there. That obviously evolved a lot, but the idea of starting with an experience that then leads you to pulling out your wallet and creating a transaction is powerful. And I think, as we look at how the industry evolved, things changed with digital, and digital brought so much convenience to our lives. I remember when I first saw that search bar that was just an empty search bar, and you could type in anything you want. It would bring you back exactly what you wanted, or filtering down to find the thing that you want. And then frictionless commerce experience by just clicking the button and buying it. All those things added so much convenience to our life. But you could argue that they sacrificed the opportunity to discover new things that were important and relevant to your life that maybe you didn't know existed yet. And so instead of starting with the experience, e-commerce allowed us as an industry to really focus on that transaction and every signal of intent that led to it. And really, the industry, myself included, weighted that last signal of intent prior to transaction with a ton of power, giving it credit for, in some cases, 100% of why someone made that purchase. But what it lost was the ability to be a little bit more magical about the discovery and what led someone to first put your brand in front of their eyes, in front of their heart, and pull out their wallet. If you look a little bit about sort of the trends that are happening right now around direct to consumer, around digitally native vertical brands, around even department stores, different kinds of retail experiences, consumers aren't looking just to have inventory in the store. And they're not looking just to be able to click buy it. In some cases, those are experiences that are still obviously important. But how do we help consumers merge these worlds so that it's a little bit more less binary and a little bit more meaningful, so that their shopping experience combines both and becomes a little more of a experiential that leads to a transaction that seamlessly works together? Those ideas have been around for a while. I mean, if you look at this chart of physical to digital to omni-channel, omni-channel has been one of those buzzwords that I've heard in my last 20 plus years in the industry. But it's primarily been a promise as opposed to actually realizing an omni-channel experience. So if you want to try to find the store nearest you, if you want to check maybe if there's inventory at the local store that you want of a particular product. But where things have shifted most recently because of system integrations, innovations around direct-to-consumer brands, people have become much more and expect, we were talking about just a little bit ago, expect a retailer to be in a place that maybe they're not quite ready to be. We hear a lot about retail apocalypse. We hear about retail renaissance. And we also hear about, and I think this is maybe a little more balanced approach, is retail reinvented. And so being able to think, this is a Deloitte study, and it's basically talking about some of the challenges are not across the board on retail. And some of the growth is not across the board on retail. But maybe it's about looking at, in the red, price-based retailers. This is over 12 months. This report was released in Q3 of last year. But it's even more dramatic if you're looking at the last 25 years, the last 5 years. The middle is balanced retailers. So think retailers who aren't necessarily competing on price and aren't necessarily on the premier side. And then the premier retailers. Store openings, revenue growth, the middle is the one that's suffering. And I think when you look at what's core to the ones that are winning, the retailers that are experiencing bigger than normal revenue growth, that's in the red here. This study talks about how the retailers that are experiencing the positive growth are innovating for the sake of customer experience. And so that's a little bit different than focusing on some of the other things that the other retailers have been focused on, which is, the bottom line, improving margins, improving things that sort of are the basics of your business, but not necessarily investing in an experience that allows the customer to see you as a retailer, as a brand in a different way. And so, with those innovations comes the opportunity to provide a much more meaningful shopping experience that gets back to helping people live their best lives through the use of digital and also through the use of a physical, emotional experience. I'm going to talk a little bit about Pinterest and how we help people both discover and do things that they love in real life. And so as you think about sort of the Pinterest experience, for those of you who may not have used Pinterest personally, wanted to share a couple boards of real life pinners, people who are saving content, ideas that are visually striking, that allow them to then name a board. In this case, this woman named her board Wearables. And then as a result of saving, discovering, and seeing things they love, they bring them into their home because they decide, oh, this jumpsuit is something that I haven't seen before and I want to buy this and bring this into my life. So Laura from Seattle discovered this jumpsuit on Pinterest and then ended up buying it. Similar concept with Henrik in Berlin. He saved a ton of bikes and ideas for building his own bike. And ultimately, this is the bike that he built as a result of all the ideas he generated. And lastly, this is an example of a pinner who is very into beauty products and saved and created this board called Beauty Stuff. And the idea here is that she was looking to help balance out her morning routine. And as a result, Alyssa over in California decided to incorporate a new product into her daily routine that she identified and found on Pinterest. I bring this up because them, as well as hundreds of millions of other people, are using Pinterest to discover things that are relevant to them and bring them into their lives. The sort of pieces that allow this to happen and for brands to engage is really a little bit different and requires a different approach to marketing. And what I mean by that is there are three elements that I want to talk about. There's discovery, there's relevance, and there's connection. The basis for all this is that consumers come to Pinterest with an open mind. They haven't decided what they're going to buy, and they're not just searching for that one item that they already know they want to buy. They're looking for ideas from brands on things that are relevant in their life. So they come undecided. 9 out of 10 people say that by using Pinterest, it helps them decide what they're actually ending up buying. And that's true because when you look at their search terms, 97% of the terms that they're searching on Pinterest are non-branded. That's very different than your traditional search engine where people are using it as a navigation tool to get to your products and they already had them in mind. So when you talk about discovery, these are the four sort of main use cases that people come to Pinterest for, but there are many others. But the biggest ones are around food and beverage, style, home, and beauty. And these are the categories where people are coming, looking for ideas and wanting to hear from brands. And then when you think about the relevance component and why these visual features are so striking, it's because they're personalized to each person. So if you have your home feed or your search results, you're going to look at that and it's going to look very different than mine. That's because the content on Pinterest is very personalized based on what people are looking at, what they're saving, what they're clicking on. Here's a board that I've created. It's called Casual Looks. I bought a handful of the things that I'd saved. The other things are things that I'm sort of ruminating on. I bring this up because each of the pins that I save, each of the things that I save, allow me to get some form of inspiration. And then the signals behind those have all kinds of annotations that are taken into account as in our algorithm to help provide the most relevant experience to other pinners. The thing that also differentiates Pinterest is the fact that that name of the board that I use, that's human curated data that goes into the algorithm that helps us give consumers the best experience. So all that data, think about, 175 billion pins on 4 billion boards across 250 million users. We have a lot of data that sits behind each one of those pins. And we use computer vision and we use machine learning to then create what we call a taste graph. The taste graph allows us to provide you content personalized, not just because of your age or where you live, but your aesthetic, your style, your taste. What speaks to you is going to be very different than what speaks to you. And so if we can put a visual experience in front of someone, the moment that they're looking for ideas from brands, the power of how personalized that can be is really going to come to life. So let's say you look at this picture and you want to do a traditional search in a traditional search engine because you really love that chair or the way that credenza looks, that clean line. What would you call that? Where can you buy that? That's where Pinterest is investing. We're investing in helping someone pivot quickly from, oh my God, I love that look. It's totally speaking to me. It's my style. I don't know the name of that style. And where can I buy that or something similar to that? And so we're taking the ability to take these images, these lifestyles, these moments, these emotions, and turn them into shopping opportunities, connecting you with the brands and the retailers that sell them. This is visual search. You've probably heard a lot of buzz about voice search. Obviously, we know that there's text search. I would argue that the industry's got it all backwards. We started with text, which is the least shopping intuitive interface for people to go into shopping mode. And then we went to voice, and I think visual is really where it's going to be at for retail. Here's another example of a opportunity. It's actually a feature called Lens, where you use your camera, which we call, sort of your next keyboard. You use your camera, whether you're in a store or you're out in the real world, and you take a picture within the Pinterest app of the thing you're interested in. You love those shoes. You think that table's amazing. And what Pinterest does is brings back the things that are visually relevant. Similar to think about like Spotify. We're doing for shopping what Spotify's done for music. We're looking at the pixels within an image, and we're identifying the objects and taking them and putting them up against all the things we have in our taste graph and bringing back the things that are most similar to that, so that you can do some more meaningful, interesting shopping that allows you to pivot from inspiration to action. And I have one more visual example. This is Lens, like I just described, but it's in combination with text searching. So let's say you take a picture of your favorite jean jacket or something that you love, but you want ideas for how to pair it with something else. So you do a search on autumn outfits. It allows Pinterest to give you, almost like a personal shopper, back ideas that you may want to consider to complement with that piece of clothing that you already own. And so how do you kind of allow a shopping experience that is much more catered to you and to things that are happening in the real world that maybe are more on trend than that jacket, but it brings it up. And just because I'm short on time, I just wanted to kind of focus lastly on the fact that we've had some really interesting partnerships where we've been able to bring to life for consumers this opportunity to connect you to the products, but not just the products with a product lay down shot and a price point, but the products in an elevated way, the products in a way that allows you to whether it's through a trend or it's through an in-store experience or it's through visual search, but how do brands connect with retailers in more meaningful ways? And I encourage more opportunities with you and these brands to continue to elevate the experience for consumers, because when consumers win, obviously retailers win, and so do the brands. So I appreciate your time. Thank you for letting me stand up here.